Hello Steelers! Welcome to this review of Peter Pig's PBI, the company level World War II rules that they produced. This is the 2015 version, which is also called, I can't remember what this one is called, but it has a Company Commander version of the game. So that's the one that I'm reviewing. It's been around for a long time and I have had my eye on it for a very long time because I've been aware of it for years and years, and I've always meant to buy it, but I recently got myself a copy of this and also the Company Architect, which is the companion, and the force lists for the game as well, and all the with all the points and the way of the different armies for the Second World War. It's supposed to be for 15mm Wargaming, but it says on the front. It says it is 10mm, 15mm, 20mm or 25mm scale figures, or even 28mm, which is the modern equivalent these days. It plays on, I'll just read out what it says on the front here, it plays on a compact 4x4 foot table. It's all done on a 6-inch gridded square system, so it's similar to some of their other games like Square Bashing, which is a game I really like, which is why I've been thinking about getting this for a long time. 2 to 4 platoons with support, some armour, and then also easy D6 mechanism. And this is a complete game system just in this one book with the scenario generator points and also a victory schedule. As I say, the Company Architect is a companion to this, and this covers the armies of the Second World War, and there is actually an absolute ton in here. You can see from the contents, each army has its own individual lists, and it also has its own individual suggestions for the different companies and things. So lots of work has gone into this. Right, before we get into the rules themselves, what I'm going to say here is going to be the negative about this, and I'm going to get this out of the way. Now, in a modern age where everybody has access to editing software and publishing software, this looks like arse. It looks awful. Just looking at the interior of this, from my point of view, I really struggle to read it, just because from a design point of view it just doesn't look very nice. The fonts are all over the place. There's massive gaps in it. Some of the photographs I found were not particularly nice. There is a section in this where it's talking about do rules have to look nice to play well, and arguably no, they don't. However, it is nice to read something that looks nice as well, and as I say, it's not particularly difficult in this day and age to produce a nice looking product for wargamers. Some of it could have been cut down quite a bit. Some of the explanations could be a little bit better, I think, just because it's quite a struggle and quite hard to actually read and to understand some of the concepts in it. It feels a little bit like in some places it's been written by somebody who knows how to play the game, but he's not telling somebody else how to play the game particularly well. And it's quite, I was scratching my head quite a lot. Now, that's something that's not unique to this, to be perfectly honest. Square Bashing was very similar. However, Square Bashing is such a good game that I pressed through it and I managed to get through it. PBI is also a good game. I'm going to say that as well. It is a very good game, but it is quite a struggle to actually read it, and in some cases my eyes were bleeding just looking at some of these pages. It's strange and idiosyncratic. Now that is the negatives. What I want to do is I want to jump into the actual into the book itself, and we'll take a closer look at it, and I'll talk more about the positives of the book, and there are a lot of positives. So please do, this is not going to be a dunking on PBI at all. It is a good game. So what I'll do is I'll get a close up and we'll have a look at the rules itself as we'll go through, and I'll talk about them in a little bit more depth. So this is the cover, as I say. This is the thing, and I'm going to say it again. When you are expecting the public to buy a product, it has to look nice. And if you put this up against something like, I don't know, Flames of War or Bolt Action or Chain of Command, you know, something that has a very attractive cover, are you going to pick this up, or are you going to, if you're a new player in the wargaming world, are you going to pick this up, or are you going to pick up something that has, you know, a dynamic cover that looks great, and you know, whether the game or not is great, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't judge a book by its cover, and you certainly shouldn't in this case, but sometimes you just can't help but doing that. Again, like I say, I'm not trying to make this into a dunking on PBI video. I'm just telling you what my thoughts are on this. Your mileage may differ, but I'm just thinking, you know, from a publishing and from a commercial point of view, just at least having even, you know, a nice cover with some lovely tanks on the front of it would really elevate this. But anyway, let's jump over from that and let's have a talk about the rules itself. So we've got plenty of chapters in here. You can see how many pages it goes on, and then we've also got a table of contents as well, which is a little bit more detailed, just so you can actually find exactly where it is that you're looking for things. And it runs up to, I think, 140 pages in total, so it's a huge amount of information. Yeah, it's 140 pages in up to the contents at least, or the index there. There's also an index as well, which is always good to see in any set of rules. As I say, the font choice is quite interesting, shall we say, and also different sizes and things. But there's a good explanation, really, of of what you need and things as well on top of this. Again, just to go back to it, some of these photos could have been a lot better. I know they're not full colour, but they just could have been a little bit better. I think just some better ways of explaining how the game works, especially to somebody who's completely new to wargaming. We do have a good list of terms and definitions. You could always check back to that as well, and then an explanation of markers that are required as well on top of this, and the basing as well. So, you know, all the basics and things. Then it dives straight into making a company. I've had discussions with my friends about this and where to place this kind of stuff in a wargaming book. I'd probably be more preferable to put it towards the rear, almost as appendices rather than the first thing. Rapid Fire does it as well. It shows you what you need, what figures you need. To be perfectly honest, I'd rather read the rules before I start working out what figures I need, and I could always jump to it later anyway. So, you know, in some ways you're reading through a thing that you don't even know what you're doing with them yet. You know, so I think it's better to put the force lists and the army list and things at the back, like the point system, for example. You know, I think stuff like this is probably just a little bit better at the back. I understand what they're doing with it here, because, you know, it's working its way through the game as you play the game. This is possibly also a bit of an issue as well for it, just because of the way that they've set out each of these sections. But the rules themselves, we have a scenario creation here. This is a really nice thing. They have the patrol phase almost before the game starts, which decides how big the game is going to be and who is the attacker and who is the defender. This is only played out on this small thing. One of the great things about the Peter Pig rules is that they do have these pre-games. In Square Bashing, it's a bombardment that goes on for up to a week. In this, it's this patrol phase, which just sets out how the game is going to play, who's going to be the attacker, who's going to be the defender, and then also how many points you have and how many you remove them after you've set up your initial force, which is a very nice way of doing it. And it took a little working out, but it does work quite nicely once you know how you're playing it. I've tried it a couple of times. It's quite a nice little system for getting that game going, really, especially for a club game where two of you turn up with armies and then just you know, you just want to play a throwdown game that isn't going to be particularly balanced. And I like that. Then we've got a setting up of the game. Again, I would have probably erred on the side of caution here and probably taken some better photos of setting tables up. This did confuse me a little bit with the setting up of objectives and things, but it soon becomes clear. It's just a way of doing things. Let me jump through a little bit of this, because a lot of this is just really about the scenery and showing you how things are set up and stuff. Then we go on to the big old turn sequence. This is reasonably nicely laid out, so you could photocopy this and then you just got a quick access sheet for that, so there's no problem with it. It soon becomes second nature, to be honest anyway. It's quite a simple game once it gets going. It looks more complex than it actually is. The other good thing about this game is we have assets, which is something that you choose of 11 assets, depending on which army you have, and these are things like, you can see here, we've got snipers, sneak move, surprise, off-table, on-table smoke, rapid arrivals, vital positions. I'll go through all of them, but you know, we've got quite a lot of these assets you can choose, so that just again mixes up your army a little bit. It's almost like a force support on top of the stuff you've already got, and just gives you a little bit more to think about, which is rather nice. Then we've talked, one thing is we have company commanders, and these act as your overall commander, and they will get units to do various things. They do stuff above the platoon commander. The platoon commander in the game will basically issue the orders for those particular elements in the platoon, whereas the company commander can also issue orders for specific things and help things. So we've got like the move, the lead and the help. These are different motivations they can use. So again, it's another little aspect to the game that is a bit slightly more random, but just adds a little bit to the interest of the game as well for both players, just to try to get you out of tricky spots, for example. And there we say we have the platoon commander. They basically give out orders with a D6, and then you can act on that number of orders per platoon. So it's like a randomised way of basically issuing orders, which adds quite a bit of friction to the game. You will always get at least one order that you can do as well. I'm going to talk about, as I say, the way that the rules are actually laid out is in the order of the game itself. So let me just jump back and show you that. So the sections in here are laid out, which is great, but it doesn't really work particularly well when you're trying to read it, simply because some of the stuff, you know, that affects morale, for example, happens later in the rules. So until you've read everything, you're really kind of lost. But I think that's the problem with a lot of rules. It's not just PBI, of course. There's a lot of rules that set it out in those different phases, which is fair enough. That's the way people write them. That's the way people write them. It just makes reading them quite difficult, I find. So I was talking about motivation. This is the platoon commander. They basically give a D6. You have to pass a D6 test to be able to give your units action points, and then those units can operate off those action points. So you basically got two tests. You've got to first of all give them the order, and then you get a number of orders. Better troops are always going to get better orders, or more orders. Worse troops are always going to get fewer orders. And then they can go on to, they give them action points, and they can do a number of actions. And it also, depending on what they're doing, is those number of actions. So for example, shooting up to a maximum of 3 times in a turn costs you 1 action point. Moving out of a difficult square will cost you 2. Shooting a Panzerfaust or assaulting a facing square will cost you 4. So it shows you, you got out of those 6 actions potentially that you have, you may not be able to do everything that you want to do, which I really like in games. I like that fact that, the command at this kind of abstracted level doesn't really filter all the way down to the soldiers actually doing exactly what you want them to do. And I mean, this is I guess it's quite a modern take on war games these days, with action points, probably coming off the back of DBA really. But it's just something that's quite nice and modern, I think, that really the more games that use it, the better, as far as I'm concerned. So vehicles have a slightly different style of action point. They just get 2d6 worth, so some of theirs are more expensive because you're using up more action points and potentially got more action points as well. Movement's very simple because it is on a 6-inch grid. You literally either you move from one grid to another. You can move a diagonal as well, or different ways. And I know one of the big complaints of a lot of people have with gridded games is that they're too much like board games. I don't really see why that is a criticism, because I really like board games. So from my point of view, it's not a criticism, it's actually a plus. And I like gridded games because there's no arguments as to where something is, whether it's either in a grid or it isn't. And that's it, you know, it's that simple. You know how far away it is from another unit, you know if it's in a grid with terrain in it or not. And if you think of them as, you know, tactical bounds, units are only going to be moving from one point of cover to another, really. So you could just think of it like that if you really wanted to. It makes no difference. And then people, the other thing that people talk about is that diagonal move. I mentioned it in the Strength and Honour review that I did. An actual diagonal move is actually 1.42, not double the distance, as Pythagoras says. But the thing, and people say, oh, well, you know, you're moving too much. Well, you're not really, because your enemy is doing the same, so it balances out completely as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, this is not a rant about gridded games and how good they are. So yeah, we've got rules here as well for transports and things. There's quite a lot of rules actually for transports, surprisingly, which is interesting. There seems to be a lot more rules for transports than anything else, but I suppose they're quite important in a game like this. Shooting is incredibly simple. You literally roll. For every rifle you're firing, you roll 1d6. For every LMG, I think it's 3d6 or 2d6, depending on the different LMGs. Let me have a look. Yes, 2d6 for machine gun base. Germans get a few extra at the end. They get an extra 2d6 on top of it because they got MG42s, for example. And then you just roll them, and every 6 is a hit. It is that simple. No matter what, you will always hit on a 6. You can only do a maximum number of shots per turn, so infantry can only fire up to 3 times per turn, which again is quite nice. It just means that, you know, you're not blazing away with all 6 of your action dice. If you've got them, you're only allowed to do 3 shots. And then shooting itself is all about saving, really. So your basic saves 4, 5 or a 6, so this is what the opponent rolls, and you get improvements, or you get worsenings, modifiers that come off, and it just makes it easier or harder to hit somebody. And it's very, very simple, and there's only a few modifiers, so you are, after a couple of turns, you pretty much know it inside out, to be perfectly honest. It's not difficult at all, and that's something that's really nice. Then that obviously causes casualties, which then go on to your morale. And casualties is all about how many hits have been taken on those platoons, and then they have to do morale tests to see if they. But you can also take casualties off as well, which is nice. So you can spend some action points getting rid of casualties, you know, basically patching up the wounded, evacuating them and things. So that's a really nice way of minimising your morale losses as well. Opportunity shooting is obviously just, you know, when your enemy is moving in front of you or around you. And then we also have shooting for guns as well, which is a really nice system. Apparently it says here that PBI, I think, was the original version of this, where you roll d6 up to the armour piercing value of the gun firing, and then you roll d6 up to the equal of the armour factor. I don't know how true that is, but it does say it in here that they've been using it since the late 80s, so I'm going to I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But it's a really nice system that works, and other systems I know use it, like I'm Being Shot Mum and Chain of Command and various other bits and pieces. You know, so it's basically a 4, 5, 6 as effects, and then, you know, basically you save against it with your other dice. So it's a relatively simple way of doing the dice rolling, and yeah, it's a bit of a bucket of dice game, but I don't mind that, because you're not sitting looking at a chart, you're just adding dice into your hand, and I think that is a lot easier. So let's just jump through these. We've got some assaults handled very nicely as well. They do cost you 4 action points to do if you can get into the grid, and then basically again you're just rolling d6 with hits as well. You will be able to shoot at them as they're coming in, but you roll to hit, You add dice or take away dice from a pool, and then that's how many you roll, really. And every 6 is that the opponent loses the base. It is really simple. It's as simple as that. So, as I say, once these things are sat in your head as a rule system, it's a really nice flowing game for it. And also, then there's the reinforcements section as well. This is nicely handled because you're rolling a number of dice to bring in your reinforcements into the game as it goes on. And you roll a certain number of dice, and you can either assign them all to one particular unit or spread them out across the various units. It's up to the player's choice, and I really like the way that this works. It is a pretty slick system. On top of that, you also have where you want to bring your reinforcements in may not be where they actually arrive. You roll against your enemy, and then they may get a chance to move them from the point of arrival that you've particularly chosen. So that's quite nice as well. So it might not be that your reinforcements end up where you hope they are. So yes, we've got some summaries here at the back end of it about weapons and things, and then just various rules as well about the various weapons. You can look those up pretty quickly and easily. As I say, it's laid out interestingly. It doesn't look great, but the rules themselves and the games that it produces are great, and it is a very, very good rule. We also go into here special rules just to run you through the last bits of the actual rules itself. And then the battle sheet is what you should print out and use for your games. Let me just quickly show you the company architect, which is the companion for this, and this is company listings. I'm not going to go through every single page of this because that would take forever, but we are going to talk a little. I'm just going to show you. Here we are. Here's the contents. It gives you an idea of the amount of work and numbers of units that are in here. So let's just have a quick look. So obviously we've got Americans, got a lot of different bits and pieces here. All different kinds of units that you can use. Australians, Belgians, British, Canadians, Chinese, Dutch, Finnish, French, the Germans, the Greeks, the Hungarians, the Indians, Italians, Japanese, New Zealanders, Norwegian, partisan companies if you want to use those, Polish companies, Romanians, Russian companies, also some rare fighting vehicles, and there's even a little section as well at the back end of it for the Korean War, taking you up to 1953, so you could even use it all the way up to 1953. But let me just show you the rule system. Is pretty complex, but I think in a game like this it probably has to be, because the grid basically levels the playing field. This is very much about the rule, the points system. So I think it has to be relatively complex, and it shows you here exactly how much things cost, how many you're allowed in the game, and also how much everything costs, which you then add on to your basic costs of your foot units and your vehicle units. Well, these are mainly foot units here with the different weapons, and if it's veteran, average or raw, and then also any notes about it here. So these are your basics, and then you just add these up, and I think it's 400 points is the amount of points you're allowed to play on the game. And you have to have at least a couple of platoons as well within that. We've got all the vehicles as well listed, and then we go, and I'm just going to show you the American stuff really. These are the different companies, so it just shows you exactly how many units you will have, what those units are made up of, how many support weapons you have as well, if you've got machine guns and mortar platoons, and then of course any notes as well that are added to the force list as well. So you can add that, and then you will add on any vehicles that you wanted to as well. As you can see here, there's a lot of American stuff all the way from the parachute troops to the infantry companies at the different parts of the war, so it goes quite a lot through the different aspects of the war, and also the different dates and times and different units doing various different things. So as I say, this is particularly in depth. I would recommend buying the company architect alongside the company commander edition itself, the basic of the rules, just to give you a good overview of it. Do try it out. Don't be put off by the cover if you see it a show or something, or just get it direct from Peter Pig. It does get a thumbs up for me. The design gets a massive thumbs down, but the design is not everything in some cases. But yes, I think, you know, this is a winner, and I'm very very happy that I bought it, and have played a couple of games of it, and have really enjoyed the games that I've played of it as well. I think it's if you've got somebody who knows how to play it, it will be very easy to introduce somebody who's new to play the game and to enjoy it themselves. Okay, so I will leave that on a positive. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Let me know what you think of PBI and how it looks, and in the comments below. As I say, I don't want to dunk on it. I'd rather support it, and I think it's worthwhile supporting. And go out there and get yourself a copy of it yourself. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you want to help out the channel, please check out my Patreon and also the channel memberships.